Assalamualaikum and a very good morning, everyone. Welcome to Razak School of Government 8 webinar. Today's webinar is called Leading in the Wildlife. Before we get started, I would like to go over a few housekeeping items and the structure of our webinar session today. To those who follow this webinar through Zoom, please mute your microphones. We are also broadcasting this webinar live on our Facebook. This webinar session is divided into 3 segments. First, we will begin with key questions posed to our guest speaker. Then we will answer questions from participants. At any time during the webinar, you may submit your questions to the guest speaker. Just type your questions in the chat and comment section. Please keep your questions short and straightforward. As time allows, we will address as many questions as possible. Lastly, we will then wrap up today's webinar session. This webinar is recorded and you will be able to access this recording via our Facebook and YouTube page. Without further ado, I would like to introduce our guest speaker today. Dato Abdul Kadir Abu Hashim is presently the Director General, Department of Wildlife and National Parks, PERHILITAN, Peninsular Malaysia. Dato joined PERHILITAN in 1992 and has served in various capacities such as Superintendent in Taman Negara in Pahang, State Director in Perak, Director of Enforcement Division, and Deputy Director General of PERHILITAN. He was appointed as Director General in 2016. Dato is also visiting professor at University Malaysia Terengganu, adjunct professor at University Putra Malaysia, board member of Malaysia Wildlife Protection Foundation, president of Malaysian Association of Zoological Parks and Aquaria, member of the National Animal Welfare Board, and member of Malaysia One Health University Network Executive Board. He holds a Bachelor of Science degree in Forestry from University Putra Malaysia and Master of Science in Biodiversity and Conservation from the University of Leeds in United Kingdom. Dato Abdul Kadir is an alumnus of RSOG. Before we go further, allow us to briefly share some background on PERHILITAN. The history of this department can be traced as far as 1932 with the establishment of Wildlife Commission of Malaya. By and large, PERHILITAN is driven by 3 main objectives, namely, to strengthen wildlife conservation programs through management, enforcement, enrichment, and research of wildlife. Second, maintaining the integrity of protected areas for the benefit of research, education, economic, aesthetic, recreation, and ecological function, and to enhance knowledge, awareness, and public participation towards wildlife conservation. Governance-wise, the department is guided by national legislation such as Wildlife Conservation Act 2010, the relevant international policy like the Convention on Biological Diversity, and several reference documents like the National Policy on Biological Diversity 2016-2025. Dato Abdul Kadir, let us get started. The first question to the guest speaker is, what is it like leading in the wildlife? Dipersilakan, Dato Abdul Kadir. Dato, can you unmute your microphone because we can't hear you?
Okay.
All right.
Okay. Right. Good morning, Assalamualaikum, gentlemen, ladies.
Waalaikumsalam.
Firstly, I would like to convey sincerest appreciation to the Secretariat for inviting me today to the webinar series organized by the Razak School of Government. My presentation will be mixed with Bahasa and English. As I was made known, the topic that is selected for today's discussion is leading the wildlife. Before I proceed to answer the first question, just a brief introduction about the Department of Wildlife. So for today's session, I will be highlighting on the current issues and challenges within Peninsula and the Federal Territory of Labuan only, because the act is in Peninsula and also in Labuan. As you may have known, PERHILITAN was mandated to conserve wildlife and protected under the Wildlife Conservation Act 2010. There is Act 716, and we operate in areas as I mentioned earlier. And currently, PERHILITAN is under the purview of the Ministry of Energy and Natural Resources, or also known as KETSA. Dulu PERHILITAN, people known as Game Warden or Juadan. Now PERHILITAN. So in terms of history, wildlife conservation in this country started under the British era. Although focusing about development and trade, the British were also concerned about the hunting ground as it was their favorite pastime. So under this reason, they felt the protection of wildlife and its habitat was needed to protect their interests. So the game warden or Magastua, or dulu Juadan, as it was called previously, was usually involved in managing wildlife conflicts or escorts during hunting season. So in 1932, the first Wildlife Commission of Malaya was established. In the same year, it was also recommended to establish a national park. And then in 1937, Federal Wildlife Department was established, and Captain Ritchie was appointed as the first game warden, first Ketua Pengarah. That was in 1937. And then in 1955, the Wild Animals and Wild Birds Protection Ordinance was established. And then in 1972, the Wildlife Protection Act 72, Act 76 was enforced. And in the same year, the State Wildlife Department was taken over by federal government and was now known as Department of Wildlife and National Park PERHILITAN, Wilayah Depandia dan Taman Negara. So in 2010, Wildlife Conservation Act 2010 Act 76 was enforced. There are 8 key areas that is in PERHILITAN. That is the key focus. There's protected areas, wildlife conservation, enforcement, planning and corporate, and then number 5 is exit to conservation, comes zoological parks, ecotourism, training and awareness. So PERHILITAN implements various acts and enactments in Peninsular Malaysia along with national policies. For example, Wildlife Conservation Act 2010, International Trade in Endangered Species 2008, National Park Act 1980, Taman Negara Enactment Pahang 1939, Taman Negara Enactment Kelantan 1938, Taman Negara Enactment Terengganu 1939, and then National Policy on Biological Diversity 2016 to 2025, and then National Ecotourism Plan 2016 to 2025, and also National Wildlife Policy, which is in the process of finalizing the document. So Malaysia is committed to conserve its biodiversity, promote its sustainable use, and ensure the fair and equitable sharing of benefits arising from utilization of biological resources. So on the international upfront, Malaysia is currently a party of CBD, Convention on Biological Diversity, and then CITES, Convention on International Trade in Endangered Species of Wild Fauna and Flora, and also IUCN, that is International Union for Conservation of Nature. So adhering to the existing legislation and policies, PERHILITAN carry out the planning and implementation under the Wildlife Conservation Act 2010 in Peninsular Malaysia and also in the Federal Territory of Labuan. So we have, our vision is spearheading wildlife conservation for the well-being of Malaysians. Our mission is committed to the conservation of wildlife and its habitat for future generation. And of course, Our objective is to strengthen wildlife conservation programs through management, enforcement, enrichment, and research of wildlife. Number two, our objective is to maintaining the integrity of protected areas for the benefits of research, education, economic, aesthetic, recreation, and ecological function. And number three, to enhance knowledge, awareness, and public participation towards wildlife conservation. So, what is it like leading in the wildlife? So, gentlemen, ladies, for your question, to spearhead wildlife conservation in Penang, Malaysia is a huge task that needs cooperation from various stakeholders, especially from the state government and also from the general public. And then, sadly, the decline in wildlife population in the world, including Malaysia, is due to various factors such as number one, the increase in human wildlife conflict due to habitat encroachment, which is our highest number of complaints related to human wildlife conflict. Human wildlife conflict is usually related to kera, and then babi hutan, and then gajah. Number two, the increase in wire snares set by poachers. There is still a need for poaching and illegal trade due to high market demand. The increase in the number of snares and intrusion of foreign and local residents to wildlife habitats put pressure on the wildlife survival in Peninsular Malaysia. Although we are heading towards modernization, the hunger for forest products, including wildlife, is still present. To date, PERHILITAN have destroyed more than 3,500 wire snares that were destroyed from the last 6 years. A total of in the last 6 years of a total of more than 160 intruders, consisting of 98 from local citizens and 64 foreigners, were arrested for wildlife crime offences from more than 1,000 operations conducted. These foreigners from Vietnam, from Thailand, from Cambodia, from Laos, from Indonesia, and so forth. So many. The last few months ago, from Sudan, 4 from Sudan. So most of them are arrested for illegal entry to the national parks or protected areas, including hunting for wildlife, illegal harvesting of agar wood. Agar wood is pokok karas which can produce gaharu. And even more for illegal mining of gold. I just want to share with you here that gaharu, the super grade A, 1 kilo, it reached about 20,000 ringgit. So huge money there, and in our forest there's lots of karas tree. So in their country, let's say in Vietnam, Cambodia, Laos, not more left. So they came down to Malaysia to harvest our khazanah. Number three, the increase of wildlife roadkills on major road. So our wildlife is not only threatened by encroachment or poachers or wire snare, but the number is also increasing due to roadkill. Macam orang juga lah. It's not only orang yang mati je, but the wildlife also have the same fate. For the last 3 days, the last 2 days, there is 3 cases of tape has been hit by vehicle in Terengganu. 1 in Terengganu this morning, 2 in Selangor. Somewhere in Bukit Cahaya Alam and then in Sungai Panjang. So in 2017 kita ada 27 kes tape has been hit by vehicle. Okay, and then I continue. Previously, just small mammals, snake or birds were involved, but now it is not impossible to find key animals such as tigers, elephant, wild boar, and tapir as roadkill, which you know that in 2017 there is a tiger has been hit by a vehicle in LPT2. And number 4 is the constant change of smuggling techniques. Okay, the illegal wildlife trade is an urgent global issue. It is more challenging at international level that require collaboration of many countries, and it is not only threatens some of the world's most iconic species with extinction, but also damages economic growth and sustainable development. It undermines good governance and the rule of law, and these smugglers are well financed, have easy access to sophisticated technologies, and well organized in committing crime. So, as the government and the guardian of our natural resources, we need to work collaboratively to overcome this transnational issue. Malaysia is welcoming all other states to work together in combating cross-border wildlife crime. And then the increase of wildlife sold online. Under the new era, wildlife are not only sold physically via face-to-face, but now through technology, with the creation of various online media channels such as WhatsApp, Telegram, Facebook, Mudah.my, Instagram, etc. So illegal traders are blossomingly by this technology. So one photo of a wildlife they caught can easily be shared on so many platforms at the same time, piquing interest in others that is interested and acquiring one. For this department had created INTAC, INTAC. INTAC that is stand for Intelligent and Tactical Command Unit, which is currently working together with MCMC and cybersecurity. And then number 6, the vast coverage on protected areas compared to the number of staffing. For example, I give you Kaziranga National Park in India. It's only 1,000 kilometers square, but the ranger there is more than 1,000 people. And then the Chitwan National Park in Nepal is also about 1,000 square kilometers, and the number is more than 1,000 people. As for PERHILITAN, we have Taman Negara. There is 4,300 square kilometer, which 150 rangers patrolling in this area. So although the number is not that many, but to overcome this issue, we have cooperation with army, police, and other enforcement agencies, which also can cover this area. And then the constant monitoring on zoonotic diseases. PERHILITAN is currently working together with Ministry of Health and Eco Health Alliance, conducting research on zoonotic diseases caused by wildlife. And then, of course, the level of awareness on wildlife conservation is still low, despite conducting various exhibitions. I feel the awareness level is still low. So we have venture using social media to capture the attention of the young and old about current issues or activities. I think I stop this no more question.
Thank you, Dato. We could feel the challenges that you are facing in leading in the wildlife. It seems that there are many parties involved. Some of the challenges are across the border.
Yeah.
And it's not only the wildlife, there are a lot of treasure in our national parks that the department has to lead and has to protect. Dato, allow us to go to the second question, which reads, how do you see leading in the wildlife in the future?
Leading in wildlife. Yeah, we in leading of wildlife, like I said just now, we have challenges. Um, for example, the increase in human wildlife conflict, increase in poisonous set by poachers, uh, wildlife roadkill, constant change of smuggling technique, wildlife sold online, um, so fast coverage on protected areas, um, and so forth. But leading in wildlife in the future, uh, uh, I take this opportunity to quote Sir David Attenborough, which said the truth is the natural world is changing, and we are totally dependent on that world. It provides our food, water, and air. It is the most precious thing we have, and we need to defend it. So same goes to PERHILITAN. I wish for the department to stay relevant, as there will always be a need to protect and conserve wildlife. So on future focus, it will be a challenge, but it will involve participation from many parties, as many are already more aware about wildlife. That is managing human-wildlife conflict, enhancement on wildlife forensics, endangered wildlife species population program, and then continue on this one is National Tiger Conservation Action Plan, continue on Operasi Bersepadu Hazanah, that is a veteran army with combination with orang asal, and enhancement on the subject matter expert. So um, as for collaboration, awareness, education, training, and data sharing, as stated in the National Biodiversity Policy 2016 to 2025, we have empowered and harnessed the commitment of all stakeholders to conserve biodiversity, and department always seek for opportunity and involvement of Malaysian to mainstream the conservation efforts. So these activities and program include stakeholders meeting, awareness program for school, local community, industry and uniform agencies like ATM, police, and then MOU with local universities to enhance wildlife research collaboration, publication, such as Journal of Wildlife and Park, fact sheet and threatened species, public conservation talk, professional training for protected area managers in the country, and also other technical training as well as scientific reference service on wildlife specimen collection in Institute for Biodiversity in Lanchak. So, um, leading in wildlife in the future. So, besides the 8 key focus which I pointed out just now, when I was appointed as a Director General in 2016, I also introduced 8 strategies in PERHILITAN transformation. Number one is positive image, that is improve the image of the department for better perception from the public. And then number 2, re-evaluation of focus. So PERHILITAN have to evaluate current action to suit current needs and solve the issues arise. Number 3, restructuring of staffs. We need to re-evaluate and restructure the organization based on the current workload. Number 4, enhancements of enforcement. Enforcement must be strengthened to eradicate illegal wildlife trade, as we must be one step ahead from the poachers. And then number 5, cooperation with government agencies. Previously, the department worked together with other agencies under the NBOS. However, now we conduct it together under joint operation, which helps to overcome the issues of lack of manpower of staffs. Number 6, international participation. So Malaysia is a member of transboundary meetings and international convention. We need to be more aggressive to protect our interests. Number 7, cooperation with NGO or corporate body. Support from the NGOs and corporate body companies is vital in wildlife conservation. And the last one is strengthen wildlife function, which we need to strengthen the current function in the department, especially on protection areas. So these strategies were introduced as I feel PERHILITAN is an agency that should always be relevant and must be conducted with full integrity, professionalism, and at the same time with a positive image and attitude. So PERHILITAN also have its own strategic plan from 2021 to 2025. So there are 4 pillars. Number 1 is strengthen wildlife habitat management for future generation. Number 2, strengthen wildlife management for continuity for future generation also. Number 3 is strengthen law and legislation and enforcement activities. And last one is strengthen governance, training and awareness towards better management. So that is what I see leading in the wildlife in the future. Thank you.
Sangat mencabar nampak masa depan tu Dato'. Dan
Betul.
daripada respon Dato', dia punya pendekatan tu kena menyeluruh. Dan yang paling penting untuk dapatkan komitmen semua pihak yang terlibat. Dato', allow us to go to the last question, which reads, what can individuals do to help wildlife conservation?
Apa ni, Tuan Johari, as you can see, many efforts have been undertaken by the government in ensuring the conservation of wildlife. Nevertheless, it is not an only role to be undertaken by the government. So Malaysia is on its steady path towards sustainable conservation of wildlife and its habitat, in line with the government commitment in the international arena for the well-being of the people, the protection of natural resources, and in line with the country's economic growth. So the government has undertaken various efforts in managing wildlife resources in the country, including protection of wildlife habitats, addressing human-wildlife conflict, combating wildlife crime, and protecting endangered species. So in this regard, the government will continue to intensify public awareness activities, strengthen interagency collaboration networks, strategic cooperation with NGOs, engagement and collective responsibility among communities, especially young people, in wildlife conservation effort. So the role of corporate bodies, NGOs, academia, and media, I think is crucial in implementing the responsibilities of creating awareness among the younger generation and garnering public support for wildlife conservation. I also call upon the support from the public to come together and support the government's effort in fulfilling the commitments to conserve wildlife. So public are urged to become the eyes and ears of PERHILITAN to successfully eradicate illegal wildlife trade. So they can report to our hotline at 1-800-88-5151. I think that's it, Tuan Jo. Thank you.
Dato', kami nak tanya sikit tentang diri Dato' sendiri. Apa yang mendorong Dato' kecimpung dalam sektor wildlife ni, Dato'?
Susah juga tu. Kebetulan je saya rasa. Mungkin pada hari yang sama ketika tahun 1992 tu, ada beberapa jawatan yang ditawarkan, saya just pick up je nak ambil wildlife. Ada berapa lagi, there are several job yang ditawarkan. So it's so happen, saya terpilih, ditawarkan untuk bekerja sebagai, at that time is penolong pegawai hidupan liar. Masa tu dia start, dia G6, penjawatan tu G6. Tapi saya sudah ada degree. Kemudian dia masa tu dia tak buka lagi untuk degree. 3 years lepas tu, and then the government buka untuk degree, and then saya ambil opportunity, dan saya dapat masuk jadi dalam PNP lah. Saya ingat itulah yang mendorong. And then I found out apa dia punya kerja ni menarik lah, mencabar, banyak buat research. Dulu saya mula masuk, saya punya immediate boss saya dulu ialah sekarang ni dia dah berhenti, dia ditukar kerja. Saya punya immediate boss saya Profesor Dato Dr. Tajuddin Abdullah. Dia ni pensyarah di Unimas, and then sekarang ni di UMT. Dia yang train saya dulu. Lepas tu dia berhenti, dia berhenti PERHILITAN, dia masuk universiti lah. So banyak benda dia ajar saya. Masa tu saya buat research on Sumatran rhinoceros. Ada lagi pada masa itu, pada hari ini dah tak ada, dah the last Sumatran rhino dekat Sabah tu lagi. Di Semenanjung Malaysia, di Malaya ni, kita dah tak jumpa kesan lebih daripada 5 tahun. So probably in the next 5 years, kalau tak jumpa juga, kita akan declare bahawa kita punya Sumatran rhino pupus di dalam hutan. Mengikut sebelum ni kita ada Javan rhino juga pupus dalam tahun 1932. Javan rhino kita yang terakhir ditembak oleh British pada tahun 1932, dan dia trofi itu ada di London. So sekarang ni kita tak jumpa kesan. Dalam masa beberapa tahun lagi, kalau tak jumpa lagi, kita akan umumkan bahawa Sumatran rhino kita ni telah pupus. Dan banyak lagi binatang-binatang kita yang bilangannya dah mula menurun disebabkan apa yang which I mentioned just now lah dalam presentation tadi. Okey lah, itu je.
Okey tu. Nampaknya walaupun secara kebetulan, tapi di peringkat awal tu Datuk ada mentor yang begitu baik, yang membimbing Datuk, dan mungkin saya percaya minat Datuk sendiri secara tidak langsung membantu Datuk progress dalam sektor leading in the wildlife ni. Datuk, kami dah start terima soalan daripada peserta. Soalan pertama dia ni daripada Wailing. Dia tanya Datuk, how do we begin to gazette example an urban community forest which has its own biodiversity? How do we begin to gazette, for example, an urban community forest?
Ini untuk gazette sesuatu kawasan, macam ni. Kita PERHILITAN ni lebih kepada pasal wildlife je. Tapi kalau isu-isu berkenaan dengan gazette kawasan ni, ini melibatkan biasanya kepada pihak berkuasa tempatan ataupun state di situlah. Tapi dalam kita pun PERHILITAN can give cooperation house, sokongan ke apa. Tapi itu lebih kepada di daerah tu ataupun di state lah. Macam tu.
Soalan kedua daripada Tengku Aida, Datuk. Tengku Aida bertanya, protection of wildlife goes hand in hand with the protection of forests and habitat. What are the efforts to manage, prevent the development activities, logging activities, and encroachment by human in the forest?
Dia macam ni. Dari segi, saya saya just nak comment on aspect of enforcement sebab hutan tu di bawah lain punya agensi. For example, untuk enforcement punya aspek, which is kita ni drafting legislation and enforcement policies, we also coordinate and monitor licensing activities. We enforce Act 716 and other related legislation. We also handling wildlife forensic matters. We also conducting intelligence work, and we also establishing cooperation and information sharing at national, regional, and international level. Itu on enforcement.
Right.
So on opening an area, just what Tengku mentioned just now. Cuma dari segi perhilitan kita hanya memberi pandangan dan cadangan jika sesuatu kawasan habitat itu atau hutan itu kalau hendak dibuka kena ada dia punya cara dia lah. So dia kena sama ada daripada utara ke selatan ataupun selatan ke utara supaya binatang tu boleh ada chance untuk masuk dalam hutan yang lebih dalam lah. Kita kalau boleh kita tak nak untuk pembukaan tu maknanya buka ada tebuk kanan, ada kiri, atas, bawah, so nanti dia akan timbulkan isu wildlife konflik dengan human dan binatang ni akan masuk ke ladang-ladang, kampung-kampung. Kebanyakannya dia berakhir dengan kematian, itu je lah. Ataupun kita tangkap dan kita akan lepaskan di tempat yang lain. Yang tu yang saya boleh komen untuk itu. Cuma satu lagi, kita ada juga implement ini CFS ni, Central Forest Fire ni, yang mana juga membantu dalam protection and corridor connectivity lah yang dalam Central Forest Fire ni. So Central Forest Fire ni is a plan to maintain and restore connectivity of fragmented forest to secure mutual coexistence of development and conservation. So ada 3 major forests that is belum Temenggu, Taman Negara and Narampe. Ini antara yang the department can comment. Itu saja dah tuan.
Terima kasih Dato'. Dato', kita balik pada Dato' sendiri. Ada tak apa-apa pengalaman yang menarik dekat dalam hutan dengan wildlife yang Dato' tak dapat lupakan sampai hari ini yang boleh kongsi dengan kami?
Banyaklah, tapi mungkin saya boleh petik di sini. Yang pertamanya that was in 1994. Masa itu saya dan tim saya buat survey di sebelah Ulu Belum sana. Ulu Belum, iaitu kami start journey kami jalan kaki lah. We walk boots on the ground ya, and from Kampung Lawa, Batu Mentang, Kelantan, and then panjat bukit gunung ke sana tu, and then ada antara tiga border lah, Thailand, Perak dengan Kelantan. So kita masuk sebelah Perak sana, and then kita jalan kaki, takes about 9 days baru sampai di Sungai Kejar. Kalau siapa biasa pergi Ulu Belum tu dan Sungai Kejar. Sungai Kejar tu ialah permulaan Tasik Temenggu, mana air dah tak mengalir. Jadi sepanjang perjalanan tu, yang pertamanya hari yang kedua tu kita dah jumpa masa tu orang tak berani masuk lagi. Kita dah jumpa, saya ingat nama sungai tu Sungai Ulu Macang. Kita jumpa booby trap, ada tulisan siam dekat pasir tu. So kita pun dah tak berani duduk jalan atas darat, kita orang berjalan atas air lah selama mengandung air lebih kurang saya ingat 3 hari lah. So tim kami orang semua pecah tapak kaki, terpaksa jalan huyang lah. And then saya juga berpeluang pakai kuali. kita nak mendulang emas, dan memang di belum memang ada emas lah. Kita orang mendulang lah 2 jam 3 jam, tapi dapatlah sebut-sebut macam pasir emas lah. Tapi kita percayalah memang ada emas lah tersebut. Itu kita nak pengalaman je lah. Kita tak boleh sakit pinggang mendulang, rupanya sakit pinggang. And then di sebelah Ulu Belum ni juga banyak harimau lah. Sebab berdasarkan pada tapak yang kita orang tengok, memang banyak harimau ketika itulah. That was in 1994. Dan kemah yang kita buat pun di situ, besok pagi kita bangun, keliling itu pun memang banyak tapak harimau. Tapi pada hari ini, bilangan harimau kita, it was going down. Sekarang ini less than 200. And for your information, jika bilangan harimau ni less than 100 in the next 5 to 10 years, the harimau kita, harimau Melaya, will be extinct in the forest. Kalau kita nak tengok nanti, mungkin di captive breeding di zoo. The next yang akan follow harimau ni, saya perhatikan kalau ikut trend sekarang ni, kemungkinan besar tapir, and then seladang, and then other animals. So as for the department kena atasi benda ni dengan segera, dengan bijaksana, untuk mengelakkan daripada menjadi keputusan. Dan kita ada banyaklah kita punya program-program kita, especially for harimau Melaya, how we want to meningkatkan bilangan harimau Melaya di dalam hutan, sama ada through in situ dalam hutan itu sendiri ataupun ex situ, iaitu kita akan buat berlipat gandakan dia punya anak-anak harimau ni. Kita ada National Tiger Conservation Center di Lancar. So kita akan di sana, kita akan buat pemilihan dan kita akan rewild dia balik. Dan then bila dia dah memenuhi kriteria, kita akan lepaskan balik dia ke dalam hutan yang akan kita tentukan pula. Itu Tuan Leo.
Datuk Cik Arif daripada Malaysian Rainforestation ni, dia tak ada soalan. Dia nak ucap terima kasih kepada Datuk dan pasukan Perhilitan atas usaha-usaha menjaga hidupan liar dan taman negara. Dan berharap semoga usaha-usaha itu akan berterusan dan membantu komuniti.
Saya Tuan Jo, dalam soalan saya, sepanjang saya masuk hutan ni, saya kena 2 penyakit yang berbahaya lah. Yang pertama, saya kena leptospirosis, iaitu tahun 1992. Itu pun saya dah ingat saya dah nak mati lah. Setahun masa saya untuk cover sebelum sakit tu. Lepas tu tahun 1998 saya kena malaria. Lepto ni saya kena dekat Ulu Belum. Malaria ni saya kena sempadan Perak Kelantan, sebelah Ulu sana. Dalam hutan sana memang saya kena teruk yang malaria ni ambil masa 3 bulan untuk pulih. Cuma leptospirosis sangat sakit lah. It takes almost 12 months, 1 year nak cover. Itu the price you have to pay lah. You go into the forest, nasib lah kalau kena.
Datuk, kalau boleh saya sambung sikit yang Datuk kata pasal Datuk jatuh sakit 2 kali. Dan mungkin Datuk boleh bagi pandangan sikit. Macam COVID-19 yang kita hadapi sekarang ni, ada pendapat yang mengatakan berkemungkinan virus tu datang daripada hidupan liar. So macam mana Datuk akan datang kita nak hidup sama-sama dengan hidupan liar ni?
Ini satu yang menarik, Tuan Johari. COVID-19, kita tahu benda ni ada di Wuhan, China. Dia punya strain dia is coronavirus disease strain 19, COVID-19, 2019. Tapi dalam masa yang sama juga, kita di Malaysia ni, kita pun ada coronavirus ni, COVID ada. Tapi bukannya strain Wuhan lah. Dan COVID ni, pembawa dia ialah kelawar dan tikus hutan. Cuma yang ada di tempat kita ni, dia cuma jangkit sesama dia. Dia tidak pada manusia. Di Wuhan, dia dah mutate from animals to human. So untuk makluman semua juga, kita di department wildlife department ni, kita punya team yang kita memang untuk zoonotik lah, untuk buat kajian zoonotik ni, yang mana contohnya kalau kita dengar dulu Nipah virus, SARS, avian influenza, Ebola, MERS-CoV, Zika, rabies. So ini semua ada dijangkakan ada impact lah pada human health dan juga ekonomi. So kita ada wildlife disease surveillance program di Department PERHILITAN ni, which officially launched in 2011. Dan dia punya kerja ni to actively participate and strengthen national capacity to rapidly detect and respond to potential wildlife zoonosis outbreak. So kita also form a dedicated and highly trained sampling team known as the Outbreak Response Team, and the development of our molecular zoonosis laboratory, which is a biosafety level 2, and the biosafety level 2 lab, and further strengthen our capacity to conduct laboratory screening and analysis. And macam saya cakap tadi, the COVID-19 pandemic happening globally at present further showed that the importance of the surveillance program to screen and detect potential zoonotic diseases, as well as being as an early warning system before they can cause major outbreak. So dalam isu macam coronavirus, China, saya rasa dia ada keluarkan kenyataan, dia kata benda tu datang dari Malaysia. Tapi our team dekat sini, dia kata daripada China mengatakan daripada Tenggiling yang disudut pada Malaysia. So kita punya zoonotic punya team kita sini, kita memang buat sampling Tenggiling, mana Tenggiling yang disudut, dan kita test hampir ke semua Tenggiling tersebut tidak ada virus COVID ni. Cuma kita percaya mana-mana yang terlepas, kebanyakan untuk makluman, kebanyakan Tenggiling ni disudut daripada Indonesia. Dan bawa ke Peninsula Malaysia ni, dia landing lah di Johor ada, di Melaka ada, di Perak ada. So benda ni akan bawa sampai ke Bukit Kahitam. Di Bukit Kahitam dia dah ada dia punya sindiket, dia akan bawa masuk Siam, dan seberapa segera akan bawa ke sebelah Vietnam ataupun China. Situ dia punya last dia lah, pengguna dia di Vietnam dan China sebab harga sana lebih mahal. Dan ada juga yang dibawa ke dia seluduk melalui kapal laut. So untuk makluman juga, bila binatang Tenggiling ni, bila dia letak rapat-rapat, dia seluduk pergi contoh ke China lah, pakai tongkang ke kapal besar ke. So dia duduk pergi pengimpit. So ada yang mati atau duduk stres. So bila dia stres, dia akan sakit macam kita lah. Kita bila kita stres, kena darah tinggi, kencing manis, sakit jantung, macam-macam lah. Dia suka binatang juga. So bila dia sampai di Wuhan sana, dia mungkin lah di situ dia dia transfer benda tu daripada binatang-binatang kepada hewan. Kita percaya macam tu, dan kita PERHILITAN dengan sekali dengan KKM veterina, kita keluarkan sudah produce paper dan kita telah publish pun bahawa kita deny tuduhan daripada pihak China sana mengatakan Wuhan ni, COVID-19 Wuhan ni disebabkan oleh Malaysia. Itu dunia cerita.
Dato', Saya nak baca soalan daripada Elizabeth Lisa John. Kita pick up daripada Facebook. Soalan dia ada kena-mengena dengan apa yang Datuk baru sebutkan tadi. Dia kata, what is currently Malaysia's biggest challenge in fighting wildlife crime? And what is the one thing Malaysia can do that will really change things? Apa satu cabaran besar fighting wildlife crime ni, Datuk?
Masa saya mula-mula masuk kerja tahun 1992, saya punya immediate boss cakap, Kadir, you pergi ni ada bengkel pasal wildlife, saya tak ingat siapa organize. So dalam tu kita pun bagilah pandangan, orang lebih sini bagilah pandangan, antaranya disebabkan oleh poaching lah, jerat dah, apalah, pembunuhan haram. Kemudian dalam tahun 2018, ada satu lagi bengkel. So akan macam ni lah, saya ingat saya lah. Saya tak ingat kat mana, tahun 2018, saya pun pergi. Jadi dalam bengkel bincang, benda yang sama juga tahun 1992. Benda yang sama juga, cuma tahun 2018 dia ada tambah satu je, online punya crime ni. So maknanya, dah lebih 20 tahun, benda yang sama, tak buat apa-apa pun. Jadi saya pun cakap lah, saya kata, saya masuk kerja 1992, saya pergi lagi tahun 2018, benda yang sama je, so apa benda yang kita buat je. So, maknanya kita tak buat apa-apa. Kita cuma cakap je lebih, tapi kita tak banyak kerja on the ground. Jadi, benda macam ni pun kena ambil kira jugalah. So, that's why bila PERHILITAN kita banyak buat kerjasama, buat and beyond lah, and boss lah, Okazana lah, Vetua lah, macam-macam lagi, untuk apa yang disebut cakap tadi, to overcome this issue. Kita kerjasama dengan dengan Interpol dan pelbagai lagi. Tapi kita juga kena maklum bahawa there is a constant change of smuggling techniques. So the illegal wildlife trade ni, ini is a global issue. Dia is more challenging at international level, which require collaboration of many countries. But it is not only threaten some of the most sacred species with extinction, but also dia ni juga damages economic growth and sustainable development. So as the government and the guardian of natural resources ni, I think we need to work collaboratively lah to overcome this transnational issue. So ini melibatkan cross border. Satu lagi, untuk atasi benda ni juga kita kena change kita punya cara kerja kita. Contohnya awareness program. Dulu saya tengok awareness program ni dibuat, contohnya selamatkan harimau Melaya atau selamatkan Melaya, ataupun jangan buru hidupan dia, ataupun kita mesti jaga khazanah kita. Kita buat benda tu sekolah-sekolah elit di Damansara, Bukit Gasing, contoh-contoh macam tu lah. Dia semua okey je, orang tak ada masalah. Cakap lah dia okey je. Tapi saya rasa kita kena ke tempat yang sepatutnya lah. Contohnya macam di sebelah Gerik, sebelah Selama, di sebelah mana lagi, di sebelah Kedah, Hulu Kedah yang berhampiran dengan hutan. Ada orang ni sepatut kita jalan ke awareness. Contohnya kalau kita pergi masjid, dalam masjid tu penceramah cakap, kita naklah bersembahyang, kita janganlah tu, kita jangan, memang orang masjid sembahyang semua angguk je lah. Betul tu. Tapi sepatutnya kalau kita nak bagi ceramah, pergilah dekat karaoke ke, night club, di situlah patut. Dia sama juga awareness wildlife ni. Kita kena ubah cara, kita kena pergi pekan-pekan macam Lenggong, macam Gerik, dan sama di sebelah Kelantan, di sebelah Jeli sana, apa lagi, di sebelah Tanah Merah, ataupun tempat yang memang ada hutan besar-besar lah, ataupun di sebelah Pahang, di sebelah Balai Kerja Antut, di PACE ke, kita kena cerita di situ apa benda awareness yang kita nak buat. So baru ada nampak dia punya kesan tu. Kalau tidak, dia macam tu lah, dia tak habis. So banyak benda kita kena buat dan kita kena buat segera. Sebab itu kita department ni kita punya tagline kita speed and power, laju. Dan kita harap orang-orang dalam jabatan penelitian yang lain-lain belakang tu dapat ikut sama lah. Kalau tidak kata tinggal susah saja. So kita kena cepat lah. Sebab sekarang ni kalau kita tengok pembangunan habitat yang ada di negara kita ni, dia banyak dah dibuka untuk pembangunan. Penelitian tidak menghalang sebarang pembangunan, cuma dia kena ada perancangan lah. Tapi disebabkan oleh benda ni, that's why bila dah mengecil je, habitat binatang akan keluar. Binatang akan keluar dan akan jadi konflik. Konflik termasuklah gajah. Konflik termasuklah kera, beruk dan lain-lain. Dan benda ni akan berterusan dan penelitian akan sedaya upaya untuk atasi benda macam ni. Dan sampai satu tahap dan tidak berapa lama lagi, we have to coexist with this animal. We have to coexist. Maknanya macam yang sekarang berlaku di Sri Lanka, di India, di Bangladesh, kena coexist lah sebab habitat dah tak ada. Binatang nak hidup, kita pun nak hidup. Dan kita tak boleh lah nak bunuh binatang. It's a bad image to the country. For example, you kill orangutan ke, you kill gajah ke, kill sun bear ke, habislah kita punya sawit tak boleh nak pergi lah. So kita kena coexist. Contoh coexistence mudah aja Tuan Johari. Contoh macam for example lah, ada sawit yang besar, mungkin dia tinggalkan sebahagian sedikit dia punya tanah tu, tepi sungai tu untuk laluan hidupan liar lah, untuk satu forest ni pergi ke forest yang sini. Dia kena sedekah sikit lah. Kalau tidak, dia tak boleh nak pergi mana-mana dan dia akan masuk dalam ni lah, rumah orang, kebun orang, ladang orang, dan startlah konflik. Cara paling mudah, panggil penelitian, pindah. Ataupun mana yang berani, ataupun yang kita tengok di Sabah sana tu, di sini pun ada juga orang bagi kajut. Macam-macam. So kita tak nak benda yang berlaku, kita nak semua benda balance lah.
Datuk, soalan daripada Dr. Megat Sani pada Datuk.
Bos saya tu.
Dia nak tahu apakah pendekatan luar kotak yang Jabatan Perhilitan perlu buat dan laksanakan tapi belum laksanakan.
Oh, ini memang soalan RSOG ni. Okey, untuk Dr. Megat, yang di luar kotak ni apa yang kita nak buat ialah pertamanya kita nak pakai teknologi. Sebab kita tahu kita punya untuk tambah kaki tangan sukar sedikit lah. Kalau boleh pun tak banyak. So we use teknologi. Teknologi kita mungkin pakai satellite ataupun drone ataupun apa-apa teknologi yang mana kita boleh detect daripada atas pergerakan binatang dan kita boleh tahu dekat mana tumpuan binatang. And then satu lagi kita juga kita tangkap sekarang ni contoh macam isu gajah yang masuk ke kebun kampung orang. So kita akan tangkap seekor daripada kumpulan tu dan kita akan pasangkan collar dan kita akan monitor di kita punya PC. And then kita nampaklah kalau grup tu, dia dalam grup tu dia akan menuju ke kawasan ladang, ke kebun durian Musangking ke, dan kita dah alert kita punya staff, dah alert pada penduduk situ supaya standby. So kita orang akan pergi dan halau balik masuk hutan lah. Macam tu lah. So ini antara benda-benda yang di luar kotak lah. Dan kita pakai satellite yang mana kita boleh tengok sendiri pergerakan per individu ataupun untuk pengesan pergerakan orang yang dalam tu lah. Orang-orang boleh, human pun dia boleh detect pakai infrared daripada atas infrared ni. So dia pakai heat. So dan benda lain yang kami nak buat banyak lagi, tapi sebenarnya kami banyak go for high tech lah. Sebab penjenayah ni pun yang dalam hutan tu pun dia orang pun pakai high tech juga. Mana tempat ada line, dia orang akan berhubung. Saya cuma nak beritahu satu contoh lah. macam saya beritahu tadi, kita banyak penceroboh, Thailand lah, Vietnam lah, pelbagai lah, Southeast Asia ni. Diorang ni bila masuk ke negara kita ni, diorang akan duduk 90 hari, antara 15 ke 20 orang. Diorang akan mencari pokok karas, mencari gaharu, and then seterusnya dia akan pasang jerat untuk protein. So setiap 45 hari, dia punya tauke akan datang, ambil barang hutan, dan tauke akan bagi barang makan. Dan dia akan duduk lagi selama 45 hari, cukup 45 hari, dia cukup 90 hari dia orang akan keluar. Daripada 20 orang tu, seorang akan tinggal untuk jadi ni, trainers. Yang people pula. Trainee of trainers. Untuk
TOT,
TOT. So macam itulah pusing tu. Sadly, orang Tengah ni orang Malaysia. Orang Malaysia. Dia pandai, dia berubah. Dia orang semua yang datang daripada Thailand, Cambodia apa semua tu, dia akan masuk ikut golok rantau panjang. Masuk sah, cuma keluar dia ikut jalan-jalan semut, jalan-jalan semut je lah. Kalau Vietnam, dia masuk sah, keluar pun sah, dia pakai pasport. Cuma dia bawa barang-barang yang pelik-pelik lah. Kadang-kadang saya tengok tadi kita tahan kat airport, dia bawa dodol, tapi bukan dodol kita, dodol babi hutan. Dia buat dalam bentuk dodol. Dodol harimau pun ada. So kita tahu, kita test DNA, ada certain tempat kita test, betul-betul dan kita tahan dia lah. Sebab dodol dia bau pelik sikit, bau macam bumbu. Jadi kita tahu ini bukan dodol ni, tapi rupa macam dodol. So banyak benda lah. Kita pernah tangkap baru-baru ni masa PKP Vietnam, dia pergi jeratnya kami turun, mati 2 ekor. Yang baru ni bulan lepas, dia pergi jeratnya kita punya sunbear, mati lagi seekor. So banyaklah dia orang, tapi yang sedihnya sebab benda dah mati kan. Kita kalau boleh, kita nak prevent is better than cure lah. Itu nak bunyinya. Ya, Dato' Megat ya.
Datuk, we have come to the end of our today's session. Boleh, kalau Datuk boleh share dengan kami kata-kata akhir sebelum kita tamatkan sesi kita.
Pertama sekali, saya nak mengucapkan terima kasih kepada semua yang ada dalam video ni, live ni. Right. So, I would like to quote lah, wisdom words from Mahatma Gandhi. Dia cakap, the greatness of a nation can be judged by the way its animals are treated. Yeah, the greatness of a nation can be judged by the way its animals are treated. So I would like also to take this opportunity to send my highest appreciation to my boss, Yang Bahagia Datuk Zurina binti Ponte, Secretary General of KETSA, for giving me opportunity to lead wildlife conservation in Malaysia. Saya ingat itu saja. Terima kasih. Assalamualaikum. Salam sejahtera.
Terima kasih banyak Datuk Abdul Kadir. That's a very profound ending from Datuk. We would like to thank Datuk Abdul Kadir for spending time with us today. We also would like to thank participants for taking part. We value your question, your views and feedback. We apologize because there are few other questions that we have inadequate time to discuss. We apologize for any shortcoming. Please follow us on social media for future session. Till we meet again, take care, stay safe and thank you. We have a 5 minutes video from Jabatan Perhilitan to be shared with participants. Please stay tuned. Terima kasih banyak. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Salam.